Okay, so it says new, who knew you? What is the word new? Obviously, the word new has a lot of different meanings, but the one I wanted to talk about and focus more on is just beginning or beginning anew, regarded as better than what went before. So when I hear that, I think of starting fresh, literally. Bless you. Starting fresh. We think about new. Everything isn't brand new, but we can become renewed. And that's another fresh start or a clean slate to something. And so, why do we fail? Oftentimes, the number one reason why we fail, lack of discipline. And discipline is self-control or a system of rules or training. And we struggle with the system, or we struggle with listening as the people. We struggle to listen. We have problem discipline. And again, like we said, we struggle with the system. We struggle with listening. And truth be told, we don't want nobody to call us out. We can't take constructive criticism. And then because we can't take constructive criticism, we're not going to call ourselves out. And we definitely ain't going to listen to God. So that's the number one issue that I have observed, is that we lack discipline. And we don't want to do the work. I'm not calling anybody lazy, but I've had my lazy moments. So I can talk about me. I've been lazy before. So we have this laziness in us that does just enough, but not enough, if that makes sense. Another thing is we lack accountability. We rather say, that's just how I am. It is what it is. God made me this way. I'm going to be who I'm going to be. Like all these different slangs or sayings to validate what we are or who we are and the things that we do. And so honestly, instead of being open and honest and real with ourselves or God, we shy away from difficult conversations. We shy away from change. We shy away from being in an uncomfortable position because we like to be comfortable in our ways. We want to we rather sit in mess and be happy than to clean ourselves up and be successful or move forward or, get help for some reason. And I don't know if that's just us as a species, but all in all, we lack accountability. And oftentimes we'll do the same routine over and over and over, but then we expect different results. And I often have said this before, and I was trying to get it together earlier. Like, how do I want to say this? I like to say this. If you're dating someone or you want to date, right? And you want to attract a different person, but all you're presenting about yourself is the same things over and over and over and over, you can expect to catch the same fish over and over and over and over, right? How do you expect to get someone of a different caliber or someone who you need, a God-fearing man or woman or, however that may be, to get in line with you when all you putting out is nudity, cussing, partying? You know what I'm saying? So it's like you have to change the scenery. You have to change what you're doing. You have to change it. And don't just change the outside. You got to change the inside as well. But that's another topic that we're going to get to a little later on. And when we make change, we should make a full 180, as I just said. We can't just change our actions and not change our inside and then say, well, I did one thing and it should work. But in reality, when we're making a transition or a transformation, that comes a whole 180. That's from inside and out. Because in reality, if you change one part here and you don't change the other part, you're going to be warring with yourself. You're going to be fighting back and forth. And at that point, you're a double-minded man. So you have to either stay where you are and cold. You either have to pick hot. But if you can't be lukewarm, because again, you're at war with yourself. And I don't know how anyone can have peace like that or actually make change or transition. So we lack goals. Goals are what motivate us. Yes, we need both. We need discipline, and I believe we also need motivation, because motivation is often what gets us started. It's the ambition, it's the drive, it's the kick, it's the, I have an idea and I'm ready to pursue the idea. But oftentimes, especially in business, we have ideas. It's quick ideas sometimes, or it's like you think it's a good idea. And you're like, oh yeah, I want to do that. And then you start it, and a few months down the road, you haven't really planned it out. You haven't really sat down and put together what it's going to cost you. You know what I'm saying? Marketing. You haven't done none of these things. You haven't researched. You haven't done research analysis. And so now, 3-4 months down the line, you're looking like, what happened and why don't I really want to do this? And the problem is, well, 1, you didn't have discipline. 2, you didn't do your research. And 3, your motivation failed. Your stamina got low. And oftentimes we do things just because, or we think it's an idea. You know, we're looking for something quick. We're in a microwave industry now. And you know, you've heard the saying when people say you want crock pot results with a microwave input. You can't get both. You got to do one or the other. I'm cooking red beans and rice. I started at 4:30. I just knew my red beans and rice was gonna be done. I was gonna eat before this event. The whole night, y'all. It's 7:43, and them beans still ain't done yet. The rice done, the chicken done, the gravy tastes good, the sausage in there, the vegetables, everything's done. But them beans is taking its time. And then I cooked it in the Dutch oven and not the crock pot, because I thought the crock pot was going to be too long. The Dutch oven was going to be quicker. But either way you put it, it's still taking too long. And I didn't get the quick results I thought I was going to get. But you know what? When I get a bite of my meal after this, it's going to be a darn good meal. Because it sat and then simmered and it got all its juices, you know, and it took its time to process and to be great. And so that's how we have to be. We have to be able to process and be great. And so, so we're going to talk about steps to overcome the hump or to move forward. And I always, I've heard the saying before. I've learned the saying and I've said it, the 5 Ps. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. I'm going to say that again. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. Or if you want to say proper planning, those words can intertwine, prevents poor performance. And what do I mean? When we fail to prepare, we can expect not to perform. And, you know, that's a quote by Taylor C. You know, I made that one up so you can mark that down. No. When we fail to prepare, we can expect not to perform. We can't expect to have a good outcome if you don't go and have a plan. Same thing like we said with the business. That's in all aspects of life. If we fail to prepare, if we fail to have plan, then we will not, it's rare we will have success. And the performance is going to be poor because you didn't account for anything that you have going on. And so we're going to talk about micro habits. What are micro habits? They're small, simple, and low effort actions that are repeated daily to build momentum toward a larger goal. So it's the small individual change, the little tiny changes that you think don't make a difference, that you start making those small changes and a little bit better every day. And so the goal is to get 1% better daily. And I read a book recently called Atomic Habits by author James Clear. And this is where I got the 1% goal better daily. And then he also talks about something called the habit loop. And I'm going to share my screen simply so you can see the loop, because if I explain it, you're going to be like, what is she talking about? So let's share really, really quickly what that looks like. Nope. We're going to go right here. And I'm going to maximize the screen. So this is what we call the habit loop. For anyone who's taking notes, for anyone who wants to take a screenshot or just write it down, we're talking about micro habits and the habit loop. And what James Clear is basically saying is, in order to make those changes, you have to do this loop on everything, the micro habits that you're looking to change. And in order for it to become a habit or a part of your everyday life of discipline, then you have to do this at least 66 times in a row. I think I've heard it says, if you can do something for 3 months in a row consistently, daily, then it will become a habit. And so we have a cue, a craving, a response, and a reward. And again, if anyone needs extra time, I will leave it here. If not, then we're good. We'll move on. Thumbs up to move on. Yep. Okay, good. Don't want to, hold it up here. So again, the habit loop. We're going to talk about the cue. Define the cue. A cue is an external or internal trigger that initiates the action. Identify the cue to which acts as a signal for the habit. So you're going to figure out what that cue is. It could be an alarm. It could be something you see daily. It's whatever it is that'll trigger your mind and say, oh, I need to do this and I need to do it now. You know what I'm saying? And so number 2 is identifying the craving. The intended action should be attractive to trick your brain into it. For example, practicing 5 minutes of speaking in the mirror boosts confidence. So whatever that habit is, once you have the cue that sets it off, figure out what that craving is. Number 3 says determine the response. What action will you take? For building public speaking skills, the micro habit in action would be to pick a topic relevant to your work and speak on it for 5 minutes every single day. until it becomes like clockwork, until you got it down pat. And when you got that one down pat, you need to move on to the next one. And then finally, the reward. Find your reward. Identify your reward and what will keep you motivated. For example, marking the micro habit actions complete on your to-do list can increase dopamine. And dopamine makes us happy. That's that happy hormone that makes you smile and laugh and giggle. We need more dopamine in our life. So, oftentimes when we complete a goal, when we accomplish something, our dopamine is what gives us those happy, excited feelings of completeness, whatever that is. But the problem is sometimes we don't sit in that reward of dopamine. Now, I'm not saying every day you got to celebrate something new, but when you make your habits and you do accomplish something that seems so small but is very big to you, you should celebrate that for yourself. And that's what the reward is. The reward is saying, good job, keep going. Good job, keep going. You know what I'm saying? And so the more dopamine you can get to yourself, the more happy you are, because it's a hormonal reaction. Your body feels good and it says, oh, I want to release more of this. So don't forget, when you are completing those goals and those habits, and you're accomplishing things, don't forget to celebrate yourself. Don't forget to thank God. Don't forget to go back and say thank you, as they say. So that's how we're going to strategize and plan. We're going to use the habit loop to begin changing our micro habits. And then until it becomes a routine, you need discipline to continue your daily loop. And then that's why we're going to do those micro habits, small things every day. Something that's not going to take too much effort of your time, because you want it to be effortless. You want it to say, oh, if I'm brushing my teeth, let me talk to God. Or if I'm doing my facial routine, let me say gratitude statements. If I'm in the shower, let me pray for 5 minutes. Whatever it is, make it effortless. Things that you have to do daily, so that way you can keep yourself in a routine. And a really good one that I want to work on is trying to be intentional, is drinking a cup of water before my cup of coffee. If I'm going to have a cup of coffee, I need to have a cup of water before it or after it. For every cup of coffee I'm going to have, I need a cup of water to go with it. So that's my way of training myself to be hydrated, because, all these sugars and stuff in our body, I want to make sure that I'm always the first partaker of whatever I'm teaching, talking about, or coaching on. And so that is my first micro habit I'm working on. And like I said, it becomes a habit after 66 times of roughly doing it. So right about 2 months, but let's shoot for 3. Because once you can do it every day, your brain don't think about it no more. You just do it. Like people who are workout instructors or trainers, even if they don't want to, they're going to get in the gym because their body's conditioned to do it. Their brain tells them, if you don't do it, something's wrong. You know what I'm saying? So it's like an alert go off. So James 2:17 says, faith without works is dead. Now, we've heard this scripture so often. And then James 2:26 says, as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without deeds is dead. And we've heard that so very often. And you can't say you believe in something, but also take no action on it. And again, we've heard this preached so often. But as I was talking to my husband earlier, he kind of was like, well, let me make this as simple as possible for you. And he was saying, and I've always said this, you can't want a relationship with God and don't spend any time with him. How you call him your God and then you don't go and take 5 minutes, 10 minutes to read your Bible, to pray, to just say, I'm thankful. How do you expect in any relationship? How do you expect to be in any relationship and you don't spend no time nurturing that relationship? You don't spend any time growing that relationship. So to say we have faith and then we do nothing behind it puts us in a place to say, I believe it, but I don't believe it enough to make action to it. I just have, I just think it's cool. I don't believe it enough to make it work. And so something I recently started to do is carry around a mustard seed with me. I've been forgetting to do it lately, but I told myself, I said, whenever I feel like a doubt, I just want to grab my mustard seed and say, this is the only bit of faith I need. Just to feel the mustard. You know how small a mustard seed is? You know how often I probably lose that? I sat it on my dresser and I ain't found it again because it's that small. But that's just the encouragement that that's the only amount of faith you need. But once you have that faith, you actually have to do something with it. In Matthew 14, it speaks about how Jesus walked on water. And when Jesus was walking on water to get to his disciples, Peter, at first they thought they were scared because it was a ghost. And Peter said, well, if that's you, God, let me come out there with you. And he said, come on, get to walking, Peter. And so Peter was like, oh, okay, God, let's try it. So he get on water. He started walking on water. But then guess what Peter did? We always say Peter get distracted. He did get distracted. But he took his focus and his belief off of Jesus. It wasn't just his focus he took it off Jesus. He took his belief, his faith off of Jesus because he started feeling the wind. He started seeing the rustling and all the other stuff. And from there, he began to sink. And then he asked Jesus, save me. And Jesus said, oh, you of little faith. See, oftentimes we see the distraction. Oh, Peter got distracted. Peter stopped looking at Jesus, and that's why he sank. You're absolutely right. But then Jesus also mentioned, you of little faith. And because his faith wavered, then his action was a consequence of it. He began to sink. So the minute we take our eyes off of Jesus, you can expect that something will not go exactly how we think it should go. And this further proves that faith is the foundation and action is the requirement. Faith is the foundation and action is the requirement. You can have faith, but then you're required to act on it, as I've said before. And then another one that I thought was pretty cool, again, spoken with my husband, and he said, faith plus action times patience equals God's will. And I'll say that again. Faith plus action times patience equals God's will. And I'm like, well, where you get patience from? And he was like, well, oftentimes we pray to God, and an example I use is we'll pray to God and we'll already have something made up in our mind that this is how it should go. And then we'll go talk to God and we'll say, hey, God, this is what I want. This is how it should go. And we pray, and then God he don't answer quick enough for you. Or two, God said, nah, that ain't how I want you to do that. But then we already made it up in our mind. This is how I'm going to do it. And this is what, when, where, how, and why I'm going to do this. And whether you like it or not, it is what it is. And then guess what? We later on be like, dog, I should have listened. Dog, let me go back and consult God and see what he say now. And now you're not too late. You can always go back and talk to him, but you should have avoided some things you never were supposed to go through. Some things we put ourselves in predicaments that God don't necessarily intend for us to go through. But because we're so hard-headed, and because we're so microwavable, and because we want everything quick, and because we don't want to listen, we oftentimes endure life trauma and struggles from our own disobedience. And I don't know where that came from, because that is not in my notes. But we're going to keep on moving it down the line. Disobedience can cost us a lot of sacrifice. It says obedience is better than sacrifice. But sometimes people don't know they sacrifice a lot of their life. Y'all know how often? No, well, y'all don't. My husband might and my mom do. I apologize to my mom a lot now. Like, I be trying to go back and backtrack for teenage life. And granted, I know I can't go take it back. But I be like, Lord, I want my dates. And I realized that I was a handful, you know what I'm saying? And so I be like, you know what? I'm so sorry. Like, I was a lot, especially now that I have my own children. Like, I get it. Kids are going to be kids. But at the end of the day, it's just like, I know I was not like that. At least not at that age, you know what I'm saying? But I'm real about it. And so I'll go back and I'll be accountable, which is one of the things we said, is that we lack accountability. I'll be accountable on my behalf on what I've done. And to ask for forgiveness, because, the Bible speaks of everything. It's the blueprint. It's telling us spiritually what we need. It tells us physically what we need to do. Like, there's nothing that's not in the Bible that we shouldn't have answers to today. Now, granted, Jesus speaks in parables. And so you do have to get clarity on some things, but there's an answer for everything in the blueprint. And if we are disobedient, then we're going to sacrifice something. And something might not always look like what you think it is, but it'll be something. And so moving on to the entire comment that I made earlier about when you make a change, you don't just get to make a physical change, you have to make a full 180. And so an example I wanted to use that God kind of dropped in my spirit was when somebody has acne, when they have blemishes, when they have dry patches on their faces. Oftentimes, what do? We run to the store because you know what? Whatever product I'm using now don't work no more. My skin must have changed. I need to change my hydration. I need to change my cleanser. I need to change my toner, my moisturizer, whatever it is you use on your face, your patches. Something isn't working anymore, right? So we oftentimes are going to go find a new regimen. But the one step that we do always miss, that is what helps with the lasting effects, is what we put on the inside of our body. Most people negate the hydration portion of it. Most people negate the food we eat, the amount of sleep we get, the exercise we do. We negate those things because we want the quickest thing that'll make the change happen. So we see physically, okay, I need to change this, but we don't ever think I need to change this on the inside. We'll change the outside. We'll change the look of something, but the intent and the heart behind it stays the same. And so because we often miss this step, we often do half the work. And again, we're now warring against each other. And when you're in that kind of war, either the good side is going to win or the evil side is going to win. you're not going to be at war for a very long time. One side is always going to overtake the other. Now, if you get to the good side and God does that, oftentimes, I'm not going to call you lucky. You've been intentional. But when you are battling and we always backslide. But the beautiful thing about it is it says Jesus is married to the backslider, because he gives us the opportunity to come back to him and get it right. And so we want to not only change the physical, we don't want to always just change the outlook. We don't want to just change what people can see, because what's on the inside will eventually pour out to the outside. If you're beautiful and the most gorgeous person on the outside, but your heart and your spirit is bad or evil or mean, then the ugliness will eventually show. You cannot hide sin for that long. You cannot hide unpure intentions, evil, basically. You can't hide those things for long. You can have good tendencies, but that doesn't make you a good person. And good is not going to get us into heaven, by the way. 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. So we're speaking on being transformed, a transformed person in Christ. So we've now transitioned for not just habits, what we're doing, what we look like. We're now going to transition into the inner portion of us, because that is the biggest part that matters. You have to make a full transition, both in action and spiritually. So the huge reason we fail is because we don't invite God into the mix. And like I said earlier, we often make our own plans, assuming this is the only way to go. And then we tell God what we want him to do and expect him to answer us like that. And God don't do that. And his plans might align with ours sometimes, but to tell him this is what's going to happen and this is how it's going to go, we got the wrong God, and that's not who he is. And so, yeah. How many of you have made plans that didn't include God and then it didn't go right? Because it comes back around and God's like, no, you need to do it this way. You need to do it that way. I will be the first person to raise my hand. I have had days, I've had situations, I've had opportunities that I should have consulted God about, and I didn't. And then I had to come back and be like, why did I do that again? Like, what was the purpose of doing this? Because now I didn't even have purpose at this point. I've just done it, And we're going to answer to anything that we do. We're going to reap everything that we sow, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. So always be intentional about inviting God into the mix, because that is the number one reason we fail in life, in everyday activities, in everything. And disclaimer, just because we invite God into everything still does not mean it's going to go our way. Because God's plan is not our plan. And it says his thoughts are not our thoughts and his ways are not our ways. So this can save us from many headaches. God's no is often his protection. And sometimes it's his direction, but God is never intending to harm us. He's here to love us, guide us, and show us the way. Romans 12:2 says, and be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. And then I want to tag on Ephesians 4:22-24. And it says, you were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off the old self, with which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, and to be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. And so the former life means previous or before, to put off or get rid of the old ways of thinking, the old ways of doing, the old ways of acting, put away all of these things. And then be renewed in your mind daily. It says in Romans, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. We battle battles often because we still living in 2006. What somebody did to me in 2006, and I'm 2025 now, and I'm struggling to let go of baggage. I'm struggling to declutter. I'm struggling to give it to God. And I'm saying I as an example, but and that's why we can't get forth. But it says, be renewed in your mind, be transformed. And then, like I said in Ephesians, to put on a new self, to be like God. To be like God, God says we have to forgive. As we want to be forgiven, we have to forgive others. And if you don't forgive, then you won't be forgiven. And so with being new and putting on a new self, with renewing your mind comes forgiveness, comes with learning to say, hey, I'm forgiven for me. And that's all I need to do. And sometimes you're going to have to bite the bullet and apologize too. And I don't know who I'm talking to, but forgiveness. It just dropped in my spirit, forgiveness. That's what forgiveness is for. Because if you don't forgive, you won't be forgiven. And so to be righteous means you need to be just, being sure your actions align with God and doing right by people. God is a loving God. His number one commandment is charity, and charity is love. And it talks about love your neighbor as their self. He talks about love in a lot of ways. And so to be like God, one of his number one characteristics is love. So when we state new who knew you, we are transitioning not just our actions, our ways, or deeds. We are making conscious decisions to change the core of who we are in order to make changes in micro habits, accomplish goals, and to be that 1% better daily. We have to renew our mind daily, actively put off the old things of thinking, doing, and behaving, and allowing God in every decision to be more like him in his ways. And he shall direct our paths. And if we allow him to, and that's in Proverbs 3:5-6. And then also in allowing God to direct our paths, we're activating faith and putting action to beliefs. With faith as foundation and action being the requirement, discipline is obtainable daily through our micro habits and accountability. Motivation fades and falling short can be inevitable, but it's what you do to get back on track that matters most. Don't wait until 2026. Don't wait until tomorrow to make change. Start now and then begin the new year in full effect that's already taken place. So we're going to recap. I didn't intend for this to be a very long session, but I wanted it to be very impactful and powerful. And so a lot of things we talked about micro habits, the small, little tiny changes we do to help us be accountable, to build momentum, and then to get 1% better every day. If you can get 1% better every day, it's 365 days in a year. Then by the end of the year, you should be almost a new person in a lot of ways. Even if you pick one segment of your life and you said, for this year, for 365 days, I'm going to focus on my health. So micro habits I'm going to create is move my body for 5 minutes every day. And every day, by the time you get to the end of the year, you should be a very well and in shape person. Because every day after 5 minutes, you're going to start saying, okay, I want to build momentum. Because after you build momentum, then you start adding time. Well, I'm going to do 30 minutes today. Well, I'm going to do 30 minutes tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? So take those micro steps and focus in the area. It don't have to be just one area. But I'm saying if you focus on just one area, if you just said, I'm just going to do one area of my life for a year, you will then begin to see an effective change. We talked about the habit loop, and that's how we're going to get 1% better every day. We talked about the cue, craving, response, and reward. Find something that triggers you to go do your micro habit, and then figure out how the craving works. Find a response, and then bask in the dopamine that your body says, you've done it. Keep doing it. Keep rewarding yourself daily. We talked about we lack accountability, we lack discipline. We talked about all those things, but we also talked about how to accomplish it, how to have discipline, how to include God into our everyday life. And with God is going to come your discipline. Now, he can only push you as far as you want to be pushed, because every day we have a choice to make. And because he's a God of choice, he's not going to force. Well, let me reshape that, because sometimes God will make you go do some stuff, even when you don't want to. So I'm sorry if you're chosen. You just ain't got no choice at that point. So you just got to endure it at that point. But, he still give you a choice most times. You just going to get beat up when you choose not to. Disclaimer, fair warning. And don't shoot the messenger. But, goals we have to set obtainable goals. Don't overextend yourself. Don't say, I'm going to be a billionaire next year, and then you do nothing to become a billionaire. How are you going to be a billionaire still sitting at Terry's ice cream shop or Auntie Keisha's sewing? I don't know, but you got to make goals that are obtainable. You got to make goals that you're able to reach, and you have to set them in a good time frame, because we can set ourselves up for failure at the same time. We'll set a goal and we'll say, I can do this in this time. And then when you don't reach that goal, you feel like, oh, well, I didn't make the goal, so I don't want to do it no more. No, set your goals, make them obtainable. Don't overextend yourself. And then the more you build on your micro habits, the more your everyday life changes, the more you can start making bigger changes and bigger goals. But pace yourself. You don't want to you're not sprinting. We're running a marathon. We're not running the 100. We're running the mile. You see what I'm saying? So pace yourself and get yourself to where you need to be by obtainable goals. You want to do these goals at least 66 to 90 days to make it a continuous habit, to where your brain doesn't just say, I need to do it. It just does it. Your body's conditioned to do it. Make you a good strategy or plan. Make sure you're disciplined. Start small. Like I said, read 5 minutes every morning. Practice gratitude in the shower. Drink a cup of water before you drink your coffee. Whatever it is to help you keep going. And then I had all the scriptures. If you want the scriptures again, I could definitely give it to you. But just be intentional with what you're doing. Faith is the foundation, and action is the requirement. And when we take action, include God in the action in order to have the results that he thinks you deserve, or he wants you to have. And whether you think is the best for you or not, his outcome is always going to be better than our outcome. And I'm grateful that you all have sat with me on New Who Knew You. This was my second event. First one running solo dolo. But I really think these steps, discipline, tips could be very beneficial. Just small daily things to motivate us, to get us going, to push us to the finish line, because oftentimes we get ourselves in a habit, and then because we don't have those micro habits, we tend to fall off a couple days in the new year. And so I'm encouraging you to start now before 2026 hits. If God's talking to you now to start changing some things, make that happen. Don't wait until 2026, because whatever he's trying to change you for, you could very well miss into the new year. So don't knock your own blessing, and don't push yourself on the outside. Oh, and for everyone who's registered, everyone who's here, I have a free workbook I'm going to be sending out. You can definitely download it, print it, or you could just fill in the blanks, or do like the text edits and then just do your answers, however you want to do it. But it's to help jumpstart, encourage, motivate, push you into doing what you were called to do, who you're called to be. And all of this really is talking about identity and transition.